With final cuts having been completed, the Detroit Lions had a shortage at wide receiver, and Lions fans were already wondering what they were going to do to fill the gap. And almost immediately, they made an intriguing move, signing Tim Patrick. We're going to talk about it, so don't you dare go anywhere.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10, 5, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So, my friends, with this episode here, we are going to be talking about what happened late yesterday in regards to a signing that the Lions have been reported that they are going to make. The Lions have not officially made it yet, but the point of the matter is that it came from Adam Schefter, and, well, Adam Schefter is pretty much the gold standard when it comes to news. So if he's saying it's likely to happen or that it's going to happen, I'm going to take his word for it. The news is that the Detroit Lions are planning to sign former Broncos wide receiver Tim Patrick to the roster. And when I mean roster, the practice squad roster. Now, this is a very intriguing move because there's a couple ways you can look at this move. And the best way I can take a look at this is that what the Lions are trying to do is they're trying to once again find somebody who can play that big-bodied X-wide receiver role that the Lions were thinking, they were assuming that Donovan Peoples-Jones was going to fill, but could not get it done. Hence the reason why he was released, and obviously Daurice Fountain was waived. So, I kind of had a funny suspicion when I saw the fact that, the Lions had been reported to have only 52 out of the 53 spots filled, that they were going to want to find a wide receiver to fill that 53rd spot. And while I was right about the position, I was not right about the methodology because I thought they were going to sign the wide receiver to the actual roster. But instead, they signed Tim Patrick to the practice squad. And the Lions signed him to it, and the intent of the signing, according to Adam Schefter, is that he is going to work or compete, whatever way you want to put it, to get his way onto the active roster. Now, Lions fans obviously know who Tim Patrick is. And the reason why is because I think it was either a day or two before final cuts were handed out, there was a report that was pushed out that the Broncos were looking to trade Tim Patrick. And that was something that instantly perked up a lot of Lions fans' ears because they know what Tim Patrick is, pretty much known for around the NFL. And what exactly is that? What he's known for is being a guy that fights for every freaking catch. This is a guy that is very, very good at 50-50 balls. He's very good at being that X wide receiver, the big-bodied wide receiver that can make those tough catches. And let's understand, when you take a look at his production in the past, there's a very good reason why the Lions would go after him. If you go back to 2020, he had a 53 reception year with 742 yards for 14.5 an average a catch with 6 receiving touchdowns. That's a pretty damn solid year. That's better than any year that Josh Reynolds gave us while he was here. And it's better than any freaking season Josh Reynolds ever had in his career. And then when you take a look in 2021, he followed it up with almost similar numbers. 51 reception season, 734 yards, 13.8 an average a catch with 5 receiving touchdowns. So, okay, this is a guy that you can get very solid, reliable production out of. And he definitely fits what the Lions are looking for as far as a big-bodied wide receiver. If I recall correctly, I think he's like 6'4", 212, 214 pounds. He's definitely a big guy. You can't miss him. So, he's not only bigger than Josh Reynolds, not only in terms of height, but also girth, but he has similar speed to what Josh Reynolds has. So think about it. He's taller, he's bigger, which means he weighs more, but yet he has the same speed that Josh Reynolds has. And Josh Reynolds, I think, was like at 4.5, 4.52, something around there. So that right there is rather interesting because Josh Reynolds was known as a possession receiver, which is in essence what, Tim Patrick is. But Tim Patrick has the ability to be a 50-50 ball kind of receiver that Josh Reynolds never was. So that right there is already an advantage to having Tim Patrick versus what we had in Josh Reynolds. Now, that is the good side of the intriguing note when it comes to Tim Patrick. However, though, as the saying goes, there's always two sides to every story. The second side of the story is that when we talk about Tim Patrick, like I said, take a look at those stats. I said it very specifically, 2020 and 2021. The bad thing about Tim Patrick is he hasn't played since 2021. And the reason why is because he's had back-to-back season-ending injuries. And these are not good injuries, especially for a wide receiver. In 2022, he had a right knee ACL grade 3 tear. Now, what is a grade 3 tear? That is a tear where it is completely tore, meaning the ACL is completely tore from the knee. It has no structural stability to the knee, so it is completely got to be redone, restructured, the whole 9 yards. So that's 2022. Like I said, right knee. Then, in 2023, he tears the right Achilles on a grade 3 tear. So, not only the right knee is injured, but then the very next year, he tears the right Achilles. So at this point, he's had 2 severe injuries to the same damn leg. And the Achilles injury that he had was on a non-contact play. So it wasn't like, something happened while he was being tackled or whatever, or something, and then that was how he got injured. It was while he was just running around. Furthermore, both of the injuries that I'm talking about, they happened during training camp. So he didn't even get into the regular season. He was injured in training camp and his season was done. Then you have to couple a couple of other things into this. Like I said, both injuries to the same leg. So it's like, okay here. The first thing I have on my mind is, how does that impact his ability to be agile? How does that impact his ability to have speed? How does that impact his ability to, be an actual wide receiver? Then there's also the problem that this guy is almost 31. Wide receivers, when healthy, typically start losing a step after 30. But this guy's already had to deal with probably 2 of the worst injuries that a wide receiver or any kind of position that requires speed to have. So there's definitely a good intriguing side to this, but there's also a bad intriguing side to this. So my thought process was, okay, let's take a look at the logic of this situation. Let's take a look at this as a glass half full kind of perspective. Number 1, the Lions need a X wide receiver. I understand. Dan Campbell said, listen, we can run with what we currently have. We don't need an X wide receiver. Okay, I understand what Dan Campbell's trying to say, but I can tell you this right now. The fact that as soon as cuts were done, the very first move that Brad Holmes does is go out and get a big-bodied X-style wide receiver in Tim Patrick tells me that, okay, while Campbell can think that the Lions can make their offense work without one, obviously Brad Holmes does not. And I would put this quite plainly. I would have been surprised if Brad Holmes would have just sat idly by and not done anything. That would have been a shocker. So for me, the fact that, freaking Brad Holmes went out and made that move immediately tells me, okay, he obviously recognizes that this is something that has to get fixed right away. And let's take a look at this from the perspective of Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick, right now, being on practice squad based upon his past injury history, the best way I can describe it is the Lions are in essence taking him out for a test drive. Most everybody here has a driver's license, that people that probably watch my show. Whenever you buy a car, you always are allowed the ability to take the car out and test drive it to make sure, hey, the car doesn't have any problems, it drives, it does everything that it's supposed to do before you invest thousands of dollars into potentially buying a car. Okay, the same thing is happening here, just on a much larger scale. The Lions are signing Tim Patrick to the practice squad and saying, hey, we want to take you out for a test drive, make sure everything's on the up and up, you can handle everything, you're not most likely going to get injured, and on top of that, can you learn the playbook? Can you develop a chemistry and rapport with Jared Goff? That's in essence what I see this signing as. If it works, hey, great. If not, it doesn't really affect the Lions too much. So that's one way you can look at this in a positive light. The second way you can look at this is that Patrick has experience. Tim Patrick has been in the league now for a bit. And let's go back to that 2020 and 2021 season when he was at the top of his powers. That's when he was really good. He was able to produce those numbers during those seasons with, I would say, less than stellar quarterback play. Let's think about it, folks. During that period of time, he was catching passes from guys like Drew Lock. He was catching passes from Jeff Driscoll. Y'all better remember that name. He also caught passes from Teddy Bridgewater. Ought to remember that name. Now, out of all the guys that he caught passes from, also Brett Rippon was in there. The best one he had was Teddy Bridgewater. And Teddy Bridgewater is an average to an above average quarterback, at least when he played. Obviously, he's retired now, but it's like, dude, for his ability to go out there and produce the numbers that he had while dealing with less than stellar quarterback play, let's just keep this in a thought process right here. Imagine what he could do with Jared Goff. Jared Goff is probably one of the most accurate quarterbacks that there is. And once he's developed a chemistry with somebody, as we've seen with Amon-Ra St. Brown and started to see with Jameson Williams, and we've seen with Sam Laporta, his accuracy can be laser surgical. So my whole point of the matter here is this. There is a very decent likelihood, there is a very decent possibility that if this works out the way the Lions are wanting it to work out, hoping for it to work out, it could be a really good setup for them. And then let's think about the final way that this is a good thing for the Lions, why there's logic in this. Right now, Tim Patrick doesn't have much value to most people. Like I said, before this whole thing happened with the final cuts, the Broncos tried to trade him. Obviously, there was not much interest because no market really materialized. So the Lions obviously brought him in as a practice squad player. So realistically, they're not bringing him in for a whole lot of money. I would say it's most likely a veteran minimum contract, maybe a little bit more. I could be wrong because we don't obviously have any contract details. But the point of the matter is that for whatever little amount of money they're probably paying him for this, it's not a big deal for the Lions. Again, the Lions have $40+ million in cap space. So if this works out and they're paying as little as they are for Tim Patrick, that's a major win. And that's yet another way that the Lions have been able to build this roster by making smart fiscal decisions. So that's another way you can look at this decision and say, hey, there's logic. Hey, there's upside. However, though, like I said, there's always two sides to a story. There's two sides to every coin. When we're talking about why this also could be a problem, why this has the potential to be confusing, bad, whatever word you'd like to use to fit to this, situation, I already know Lions fans, when it comes to this particular signing, they're going to be like, oh boy, here we go again. And the reason why I'm saying that is because of the Emmanuel Mosley effect. And the reason why I say that is because I've already been talking to some of my Lions pals, my Lions buddies, and almost immediately as soon as the news came across that we were signing Tim Patrick, they were like, that's Brad Holmes again showing an affinity for oft-injured players, injury-prone players. And so it's like, okay, there obviously is a somewhat, pattern to this because, let's be fair here, Brad Holmes has done this in the past. He brought back Emmanuel Mosley after he tore his ACL, and then literally just as soon as we get into camp almost, he goes out and he tears the other ACL. So it's like, okay, dude, you just don't have any luck there. And then we've obviously had other situations in the past with, players that have had, lingering injuries as well, such as Levi Onwuzurike, such as Josh Paschal in a couple of instances. So for some Lions fans, this is definitely annoying to them because it's like, why are we constantly going after players that are always injured or have long-standing injury problems? So that's one way that I could see Lions fans not looking too kindly or warmly on this kind of a deal. The second way I could see this being a problem for Lions fans is this. Let's just look at this situation and think about where we are in relation to the start of the season. The Rams game is literally 2 weeks away, and the Bucs game is right after that. If you take a look at the first 4 games of the Lions' schedule this year, 3 out of 4 of them are at home. The Lions need to take advantage of that grace that the schedule makers of the NFL gave us. Because that right there, if you start out hot, that is going to carry some momentum going forward. And if you can start the year 3-1, 4-0, which is what I'm expecting, 4-0, that is going to go a long, long way to making yourself, already setting things up for when you get to freaking, October, November, and then December. And the reason why I'm saying all this is a bad thing or a potentially bad thing with this whole Tim Patrick signing is that obviously we know the Lions need an X wide receiver. That's obviously why Brad Holmes made this move. Well, let's think about it. Obviously, the Lions are going to give Tim Patrick some time to try and prove whether or not he's able to make this work. Well, let's just play devil's advocate here and say that it doesn't work. Let's say that everything the Lions are hoping for goes completely the opposite way. Well, obviously, this is going to take some time, like I said. But if the whole situation with Patrick doesn't pan out, and, either he can't learn the offense, he's not able to catch a groove or get in sync with everything, or heaven forbid he gets injured again, we're right back to square one. Unless, of course, Brad Holmes brings in another wide receiver on, the practice squad that fills the exact same kind of parameter that Tim Patrick is in, competes the two together, and then, hey, you know what? Maybe Tim Patrick didn't work out, but this other guy did. And maybe that's something that Brad Holmes does. But the whole point of the matter is that obviously the Lions are invested in Tim Patrick because that was the very first move they made. And they could have made any number of moves as soon as all teams freaking, cut their players. Because at that point, it's free game. It's free season, open season, whatever. Hey, you know what? If there's a free agent, let's try and call him in because we can already negotiate a contract for him. Hey, let's put in waiver wire bids and see what we can get. That's my whole point. So obviously the Lions see something in Tim Patrick and they want to make sure, hey, we get him first so that way we have a chance to see what we have with this guy. So my whole point is to kind of wrap this whole episode up is that should this work, the Lions would have almost a near perfect offense because you have J-Mo, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you obviously have Sam Laporta, and you have Gibbs. These are established weapons. Plus, you still have Khalif Raymond, who can be very productive when you need him to be. Obviously, Isaiah Williams, who made the team, congratulations to him, he has the ability to make plays, but we haven't seen him do it with the first team offense yet. But the whole point of the matter is that there's obviously plenty of weapons, but the only thing that was missing was this big-bodied wide receiver. If Tim Patrick is able to actually pick everything up and plug right in, now you've got everything you're looking for. You have every single piece of this offense covered And now this offense can do everything that it needs to do without any sort of hindrance or any sort of limitations, obviously provided without injury. And again, let's just end everything on the obvious note here. The only reason why this couldn't work is if, again, Tim Patrick can't stay healthy or he can't learn the playbook or can't, fit into this whole style of offense. That's really what this all comes down to. But again, I'm fairly confident that Brad Holmes is not done making moves because I'm pretty confident he's going to bring in other wide receivers. He's not just going to put all of his eggs in one basket. He never has. But I'm obviously stating with this episode, I believe that the Lions are wanting Tim Patrick to be the guy to come in and fill that X wide receiver role. Whether or not he actually does, that remains to be seen. But I'm going to say this. He's got 2 weeks to figure it out if he wants to have a chance of playing against the Rams. Otherwise, we're going to go into that game with only 4 wide receivers, which that's going to be a little bit of an uncomfortable proposition, if you know what I mean, because now you're short on wide receivers, which means you're putting more pressure on other players to step up and make sure that they can fill that role, which I have no doubt they can, but it would be better if we had Tim Patrick or whoever the Thunder we get to work at that X wide receiver role to make this work better. But anyway, folks, I figured I'd put this episode together because the news did happen kind of late yesterday, so I wanted a chance to talk about this early this morning because I think this is very intriguing. I think this has the potential to go in a very good direction. It just really depends on how it plays out. But having said that, I'm going to end the episode and say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to do one of these 3 things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, again, want to encourage y'all to subscribe. But I also want to encourage y'all, please, make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also want to encourage y'all to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel can grow, the greater the channel has a spread, and the greater the channel has a reach on YouTube and everywhere else. And with that being said, to all my loyal fans and to everybody who decided to tune in, I hope y'all are having a great day. I hope y'all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. Hope y'all enjoyed the content. God bless, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.